Hey, what's going on, everybody? Back with another how-to. Today we're going to be doing an oil change on this 2016 Scion IM 1.8 liter. Now this should fall in line with any 2016 Scion IM, as well as the Toyota Corolla IM, which was 17 and 18. So any one of those 1.8 liters, this should be exactly the same. So let's go ahead and get into it now. All right, so of course the first thing we want to do is jack the vehicle up and get it on jack stands. So as you can see, I have it on the jack stands right there at the jack point, and I used a floor jack right here on the center point right here. So right here on the center point, that's where I jacked from. I jacked her right up through our stands underneath of it. So now we have the car safely in the air and we can go ahead and move on with the oil change. So of course you're going to need an oil drain pan. I also have an aluminum pan I put underneath for any splatter or anything like that to help protect the ground and, you know, wherever you're working at. So this helps prevent messes. Not a must, but obviously helps. So we got our drain pan here. Go ahead and put it underneath of the car. All right, so we want to come up to the engine bay and come right to the oil filler cap. As you can see, it says 0W20 right on it. Should not be that tight, should come off hopefully, shouldn't have to fight it too much. And we're gonna go ahead and crack that open. I'll leave it open right there just like that. And now we can get into going under the car and draining the oil. So here is our oil pan on this 1.8, and there is the oil drain plug. It is a 14 millimeter. Okay, so you could use a 14 millimeter wrench, a 14 millimeter socket, you know, whatever your tool of choice is, but the socket on this is a 14 millimeter. So I have the drain pan underneath with my ground protection on my aluminum pan. I'm going to take a 14 millimeter deep socket on a 3/8 drive, and we're just going to crack that right loose, and then we're just going to go ahead and let the oil drain. All right, so I have a 14 millimeter deep right on there with a 3/8 drive. Just gonna go ahead and crack that loose. Wasn't too tight as it shouldn't be, so I'm just gonna go ahead and back this right off by hand, get this oil right into our drain pan, and we'll go ahead and get this old oil out. All right guys, oil is draining, so we're gonna go ahead and let all that come out and we'll get into our next step. All right, so our oil has come to a slow drip, just about ready to go ahead and put this oil drain plug back in. Now, if you look at our 14 millimeter drain plug, it does have a washer on there. That is the oil drain plug washer. Most of the time it's recommended to replace these on every oil change interval. Although the last time this oil change was done, it was done at the dealer, so I'm hoping that it was replaced, and might be kind of hard to tell right now, but it looks pretty clean and this thing isn't crushed or destroyed. So I'm actually going to reuse this one because it looks pretty new still and it doesn't look damaged. So I'm just going to be reusing this OEM crush washer. It looks okay. So I want to go ahead, thread this thing right back in here. You might get a little bit of oil in your hand when you do this, but we're just going to do it finger tight at the moment. I got it really tight with my hand, and we are going to be torquing that to spec, and I'll give you guys the torque spec and we'll, you know, torque that when the time comes. But we're going to go ahead now and get into the oil filter, which is right there. Okay, so there is our oil filter housing for the cartridge style filter. Now it's right there on the passenger side, right behind the oil pan. Okay, so you can see there's the tire, there is the oil filter. A lot of people have trouble getting these off. I would recommend picking up the correct tool. Now the correct tool for the job I have right here, this is the Performance Tool oil filter wrench. You can pick this up right from Advanced. There is the part number, it's W54120. It's 64 millimeter, 14 flutes. This is the correct oil filter wrench to go on this housing. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of people that have problems getting this off. A lot of times they're over tightened, and you know, the true way to get this off without destroying that filter housing is getting one of these. I also have another oil filter wrench, which would be this one right here. This is actually an OEM 25404. Now if you have this on hand, it might work. I haven't tried it, but it is a 14 flute, fits right over. It's a 67 millimeter 14 flute. It does fit right over that first part of that housing. So if you have one of these on hand, you might be able to get away with using it. But if we actually take this Performance Tool one that I mentioned that I have here, and we throw this on, it just fits over perfect. So that is the perfect oil filter wrench for it. like I said, W54120. And what we're going to do now is go ahead and throw this on a half drive socket wrench, because this is a half drive, and we're going to go ahead and crack that filter housing loose. Alright guys, so there is our filter housing. Now if you notice on this housing, it has a tooth, well, I guess you can say, right there, and 2 on the other side. And then the outer edge of this filter socket has 3 grooves on each side to fit around those teeth. So you want to make sure you orient it where you can slide it on, and that actually catches around those teeth. So if we move the camera, you should be able to see right there on the side. Hopefully you can see that, but you should be able to see where one of those grooves is going right around that tooth right there. Okay, so that's right where the tooth of that outer edge of the filter housing is going into that cutout groove on the outer edge of the filter wrench, and then it also goes on the inner part. So really this locks in on both the outer edge and the inner part. So that's just something to keep in mind. All right, so what we're going to do is go ahead and crack that thing loose. So I have a half drive socket wrench. I'm going to go ahead and put that on there right now. Now you want to make sure you got your oil drain pan and everything underneath of this, because it is going to drain oil, of course. So I got it on. Let's see if we can crack this thing loose. Ooh, it's on there pretty tight. There we go. So this is an adjustable 1/2. I just dropped it down. It gave me a little bit more leverage to get that off. Like I said, these can be really tight if you're trying to use like a strap wrench, or you know, like the pliers or something like that. You're going to be chewing this thing up with the pliers. So really, I mean, it's worth investing in this tool in order to get this thing off, especially if you didn't do it before, not knowing how tight this thing might have been put on, because it seems to be a pretty common occurrence that people put these things on way tighter than they're supposed to be. So let's go ahead, back this thing off here. Should be getting close. I probably don't even need our wrench here anymore, the socket wrench. I can just back it off with my hands. So I'm going to lightly back this off, and then we'll go ahead and get our filter out. All right guys, and there you see we got the oil coming out. It's pretty loose, almost off, so the oil is going to drain out. So we'll let the oil drain out, and then we'll take that housing all the way off. All right guys, this oil is coming to an end here, so take out the last couple threads. So you got a little bit more coming out, but go ahead and drop that off. And there is the housing with the filter inside, wrench all in one. And there is the housing. So let's go ahead, clean this thing up. We'll get the filter out, new filter in, then we'll get into the next step of the oil change. All right, so here is our filter housing here with the filter inside. So it literally just pulls right out. So there is our housing. I'm going to wipe this out with a paper towel and clean it up a bit with a brake cleaner. And we're also going to get into one more step on this before we actually put it back in. But here is our oil filter. This is the OEM filter, Toyota Lexus genuine filter. The part number is 04152-YZZA6. So OEM filter, okay. You can even get these at Walmart now, which is pretty cool and convenient. So let's go ahead and open it up. It should be identical to the one that we have, and it also comes with the O-ring, which is the step I was referring to that we're going to do before we actually put it back in. So we're going to remove the O-ring around the housing, replace it with the new one. So let's get our filter out here. Should be identical, looks good, and there we go guys, perfect match. So I'm gonna go ahead, clean up this housing, and then we'll throw the filter in and we'll put the O-ring on, and then we can go ahead and get our oil filter housing back onto the car. All right guys, so I got this thing wiped down, cleaned up a bit. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and take this O-ring off right here. There's a couple different ways you can do it, a few different tools. I'm just gonna be using this pick. It's like a weird hook end. And literally just pull it up, off. Really simple, took 2 seconds. All right, so there is the old O-ring, and now we're just going to slide our new O-ring over and get that installed, and then we can go ahead, slide our filter in, and then we can get this whole housing back on. All right, so here is our new O-ring right here. You can literally just take it right over top of it, slide it over. It's going to be a lot tighter than that stretched out old one that's been on there for a while. So it's going to maybe take a little bit more persuasion to get into place, but this one fell into place pretty nice. So we got our O-ring in place. All right, and now what we want to do is just take a little bit of oil and go around the edge of the O-ring, and that way it has a little bit of slickness and ease when we go to put it back on. So I just took a little dab of the old oil, put it on my finger, spun it around just to get that seal oiled up to make a nice seal when we go ahead and screw that thing in back to the oil filter adapter. So now that we have that all squared away, O-ring on, we can take our new filter, slide it right on into the housing, and now this is fully prepped and ready to go, and we could go ahead and start threading this back into the oil filter adapter. All right, so we have our new oil filter into the oil filter housing, new O-ring installed. Go ahead, put this back up where it belongs, and we should be able to start finger threading this into place. As you can see, she's going on. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get this hand tight, and then we're gonna go ahead and finish it off with our socket wrench. All right, so on the cap of the oil filter housing, there is a torque spec. It's 25 Newton meters. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw our Performance Tool oil filter wrench back around, and we're gonna torque this to 25 Newton meters. All right, so I have my torque wrench. I actually have an extension on it to get a better angle on this thing. So I'm gonna go ahead, lock this in to 25 Newton meters. You can hear her on the way in because that seal is making a hair noise as it's contacting, so coming close. All right, there we go, guys. It's locked in. Got that on. Torque the spec. This thing's a little tight on here. Let me see if I can get it off. She don't want to come off. There we go. All right, guys, so oil filter housing is torqued to spec, got it nice and clean. Now I'm going to go ahead, wipe this down a bit more, and I'm going to clean both the housing and right here where the drain plug bolt is. I'm going to clean both of them up. I'm going to hit them with a little bit of brake cleaner, wipe them down, and that way we have a nice clean area, and we can check when we're done to make sure nothing's leaking and that everything looks good. So just barely spraying a little bit of brake cleaner. Brake cleaner is your best friend for oil. Get that nice and wiped down all the way around. All right, so that's pretty clean. That should dry nice, and then we'll have a nice way to check and make sure we have no leaks. Just ensure that everything's 100% once we're done and we fill everything back up with oil and start the car. So last step while we're under here is going to be torquing our 14mm drain plug bolt to spec. Now the torque spec is 27 foot-pounds. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, lock my torque wrench into 27 foot-pounds, and we're going to go ahead and get that thing torqued to spec. All right, guys, I have my torque wrench here locked in 27 foot-pounds, and we're just going to go ahead and make sure this is nice and snug, and we got a good seal on our drain plug bolt. So there we go, completely locked in, 27 foot-pounds. So now we got everything good to go. In fact, I'm even going to hit this a little bit more with brake cleaner real quick, make sure we're good to go. Everything looks good. So we got everything nice and cleaned up under here. All right, and now we can go ahead, go to the engine bay, and we can start filling up our oil. All right, so we're under the hood here. So our cap is right where we left it. All right, 0W20. I have the oil right here. I have Mobil 1 synthetic high mileage because this car has 110,000 miles on it. 0W20, 0W20. So we're good to go. That is the oil that we're going to be using. Of course, I have a funnel. So I have this pretty nice size funnel. It fits perfect. All right, right there in our oil fill spot. So our oil capacity is 4.4 quarts. So this is 5 quarts. We're going to be utilizing most of this, but I want to cut it off a little bit short, half quart short, so we actually get right in that 4.4 range, and we can get the correct capacity into our 1.8 right here. So 4.4 quarts, Mobil 1 0W20. Let's go ahead and get this thing filled up. All right, guys, got our jug here. Let's go ahead and get this thing filled up. 4.4 quarts. Should pretty much be able to dump most of this, and Once you start feeling it coming to an end, check, see where you're at, and then you could cut it short so you don't put the whole 5 in there. All right, I'm getting pretty close. I'm gonna check where I am. I'm a little under a quart left, so I'm gonna give it a hair more. Check here. One more splash should be good. There we go, guys. That should be 4.4 quarts in this 1.8 liter here. So we're good to go on that. Motor is filled up. Go ahead and we're going to throw our oil fill cap back on here. Just thread back in, nothing crazy. All right, got that locked in. So now we have everything changed. We have the oil in, we have the new filter in, we torqued our 14mm drain plug bolt to spec. So one last thing we have to do, and that's reset the maintenance reminder light. So I'm gonna go ahead and get in the car and we'll go ahead and get that reset. All right, guys, in the car, I have the key to the on position. As you can see, we have our maintenance required, visit your dealer notification on the dashboard here in the cluster. And as you can see, it's at 110, like I mentioned. So let's go ahead and get this thing reset. So what you wanna do is utilize the steering wheel controls right here. So I'm gonna be hitting the back. It's going to take us back, and what you want to do is go over to your settings. So there is the settings right there. Okay, so I'm literally using the arrow and I'm just scrolling through these menus and going to the settings gear right there. So what I'm going to do is scroll down using the arrow to scheduled maintenance. I want to hit the middle button. It's going to be an OK button basically, and then I'm going to go up to reset data. Yes, with the OK button, the data has been reset. So now if I hit back and go over, I should have no messages, so no more notifications. And I want to go ahead and turn this off. We'll let that turn off for a second. And if we turn the car back on, we should no longer have the scheduled maintenance, visit your dealer, maintenance required light. So this thing just turned on. First startup since our oil change. No messages. We're good to go. So everything looks good. Maintenance light is reset, and then we've completely done the oil change and finalized it with the maintenance light, guys. So one last thing we want to do just before we finalize this and pull the car out is I want to get underneath of it and look at it and make sure we have no oil leaks, make sure our oil filter housing looks good and the drain plug bolt looks good. And the car is running, so it's been running for a little bit, so we should know by getting under there if we see any oil leaks, if we have a problem or not. So let's go ahead and get on the car, just do a double check, and then we'll make sure we're good to go. All right, guys, car has been running for a bit. You can see oil filter housing's dry. We got no leaks. We got no leaks from our 14mm drain plug bolt, so everything is nice and dry, exactly how we want it to be. So looks like we got everything perfect, everything torqued in, locked in, exactly where it needs to be, guys. So we have finalized the entire oil change process on this 2016 Scion IM 1.8 liter. So I hope this helped with doing the oil change on this car. And this also, keep in mind, falls in line with the Corolla IM in 17 and 18. So just keep a lookout. You never know when I might be wrenching on this thing again. And until next time, guys.